But with our first college game going on this weekend, the first Inside Lacrosse media poll is out.
It's exciting, and just by the skin of their teeth, Penn State, your #1 team in the media poll. They got 11 of 20 first-place votes, a championship weekend team from a year ago. They bring back, of course, the top point scorer in the country, and Grant Ament, alongside top goal scorer in the country, Matt O'Keefe. They begin the season this Saturday at home against Lafayette.
As you mentioned, by the skin of their teeth, just 1 point behind Penn State was Virginia for #1 team in the country. The Cavaliers were #1 in the IL Faceoff yearbook, but #2 in the first media poll this season. Much like Penn State, the national champs from a year ago, returning pretty much all their offense, but some holes to fill on the defensive side.
Last year's runners-up, Yale, Maryland, then Syracuse rounding out the top 5. Sam Hanley returning for his sophomore season at Penn. That has the Quakers at 6. 3 more ACC teams in the top 10, with Duke, Notre Dame, and North Carolina all finding themselves in the top part of this poll. Ohio State at 12. Loyola moving on from Pat Spencer. They're now at 14. Towson and UMass, a couple of CAA teams, coming in at 17 and 18.
Travis is one of the people who voted on this poll, so now it's time to look at what Travis thought. It's not too
it's pretty
different.
Similar.
You know, when you're making this, obviously a lot of thought goes into it. What's the #1 thought that comes into your head?
My #1 thought is that I think the top 4 or 5 is pretty obvious to me in terms of the teams that are in that category. I think especially the top 3. I think Penn State, Virginia, Yale, all championship weekend teams from a year ago who all return a lot. So when you've proven something the year before and then you come back with a lot of talent, those teams, to me, at least in the preseason, from what we know, they set themselves apart.
And I think that's also probably why you have Maryland and everyone else has Maryland above Syracuse in terms of what is known about what Maryland did last year. One blown call away from being in championship weekend and bringing back most of the talent from last year for the most part. Syracuse with some new faces in there. We don't know how that's going to work just yet, quite honestly.
Right. I mean, Tucker Dordevic comes back from injury. You don't know what he's going to be in his first year back from missing all of last season. Obviously, Chase Scanlon, you got to see how he fits. A lot of different pieces.
So you had Duke above Penn. Penn was above Duke on the Inside Lacrosse media poll for the most part. Duke, another one of those teams to me, feels like, all right, so what have they proven? I mean, they went to, obviously, the championship weekend.
Last 2 years.
But at the same time, you're not really sure. I guess Duke is hard to figure out still, despite that.
It is hard to figure out, and it's kind of one of the reasons why I put them where I did. There are people that probably, like the Face-Off Yearbook poll has them higher than a team like Syracuse. But for me, you look at Duke, they have a ton of depth in terms of talent. They've got a bunch of really, really good players offensively.
Yeah.
So in terms of defending them, you got to figure out, all right, it's the feeling that it kind of maybe anybody can get hot. You don't need one guy to get hot if you're Duke. You have a couple different options. But then again, you also don't have the alpha guy. So that is a catch-22, something you got to deal with. The difference for me in this Duke team compared to last year's is last year's you knew you had JT Giles-Harris and Cade Van Raphorst. You had 2 first-team All-American defensemen at the other end of the field. Now it's just JT Giles-Harris. So who else steps up on that end? That's what they hung their hat on last year. Now you got to figure out what you're going to hang your hat on this season.
Also losing John Prendergast up to graduation, one of the best short stick D middies in the country. A guy that I think needs to step up now is Nakai Montgomery. This is the year that he needs to be the guy and sort of lead that offense.
At least in that midfield.
Notre Dame, another team that sort of stuck out to me too. 9-7 last year, 2-2 in ACC play. 8th for you. 8th as well in the media poll. So you're right on the same page. Notre Dame, another team where, I mean, you see what they have coming back, and they also bring in a pretty decent recruiting class, second best class. They have 4 of their top 5 scorers coming back too. So I think that the known of maybe the talent people know, hey, that they have this continuity, it might be part of this, along with the recruiting class, might have them higher than most, I guess. Even the ACC standings, too, they're very high.
Yeah, I'm going to be honest, I don't really know what to make of Notre Dame yet. They lose their assistant coaches from last year, and the big question mark is,
that's the thing.
You've been hanging your hat on Notre Dame's defense, and the guy that has been the orchestrator of that defense for all these years has been Jerry Byrne. He's gone. So what is that defense now without Jerry Byrne? You have a guy in Ryan Wellner who's a great coach, an upcoming guy. He was terrific at Navy. a guy that I think Coach Amplo wanted to bring back to Navy, but he gets the great opportunity at Notre Dame. What does he do? Does he stick with the same system that Jerry Byrne has and that these guys know, or can they figure out and learn a new system? And how does that all work with what Notre Dame has been? They do have some great recruits, a couple of guys on that U19 team for Team USA as well. So I'll be interested to see, can Brian Costabile just be the guy? I mean, he's going to have to be. He's going to have to put up, I think, even better numbers this year if they're going to be a team championship weekend back.
And their freshmen could also be very good, something you can say for Duke as well, and sort of having them this high. Ohio State, another team, we had Chris Marshall on. He's really high on Ohio State this year. I don't know, because of maybe a little bit what they did last year, and some games just sort of scratched your head. The loss to Rutgers was weird. The loss to Michigan was weird.
The Michigan loss was really weird.
Really cost them a chance at making some noise in the postseason. You look at Jack Myers, who I thought was really good for them as a freshman. They lose a couple guys on defense. They lose Jasinski as well. Yep. A team that I could break out, but still, you have them, what, at 9 in yours, and
I really like
this
Ohio
was one of the
State.
biggest discrepancies, as the media poll has them at 12. So you have Ohio State in top 10. Why?
I really like Ohio State. I had a chance to see him play UMass here on LSN last year. You mentioned Myers. I love him. Trey LeClaire is an elite player. We saw him as a freshman. Ohio State made that run to championship weekend, to the championship game.
Yeah.
He's an elite level scorer. So if Myers takes another step forward as a guy who can be a quarterback as an offense, and that takes some pressure off Trey LeClaire, allows him to play more of the role he played in his freshman year, where he can just be a finisher, or be more of a finisher. I really like this team offensively, and Justin Inacio is one of the best face-off guys in the entire country. So they're going to get the ball.
Yeah, that unit works really well together.
And you know, they had a lot of pieces defensively to figure out. I think you get another year with some of these guys. I trust Coach Nick Myers.
Jackson Reed, another key contributor for them,
really good player
too. So a guy that can sort of play that third, second fiddle if need be. Lehigh, as we get to a little bit sort of the back end of these rankings, a team from last year we were all really high on with all the guys they had coming back. Now that they don't have all the guys coming back, but they do have Andrew Pettit coming back.
And he's the guy.
Right, which is the guy. Also really good at the face-off.
And honestly, when you get down to this point of the poll, and the biggest difficulty for me at this point, and Lehigh is this type of way, Army is as well. You look at Towson and UMass, similar situations. You got a guy or two. And there are some knowns on all these teams, but there are a ton of question marks. With Lehigh, a lot of question marks. The things you know, Andrew Pettit is an elite level attackman. Yeah. And you know they can win face-off because they got a couple of guys in Connor Gaffney and then also now sophomore face-off man in Sisselberger that they have options there at the face-off X. So you know those two things. Now, what else can you figure out? You know the goalie as well for Lehigh. So that's the interesting thing with this whole part of the poll.
One more note, Patriot League for some of those teams, which, like we said, no Pat Spencer anymore, no Johnny Surdick anymore. It's a little more wide open than it has been.
Army's the same way. Brendan Nichtern, really, really good. Then questions like, what else are we going to figure out?
You never know.